My guest today is Christina Poole, a co-founder of City Schoolhouse, a low-cost private school in the heart of Louisville, Kentucky, that focuses on family-centered learning. 68% of the families at City Schoolhouse are on 100% need-based financial aid, which is made possible through generous donations and fundraising efforts. Christina opened City Schoolhouse in early 2017 with 9 students, plus her own 5 children at the time. Today, Christina has 7 children, ages 18 months to 12 years old, and she homeschools them all. And today, City Schoolhouse has 45 full-time students, as well as an after-school program for students who attend local public schools. Christina Poole, welcome to the Liberated Podcast.
Thank you. So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'd love to start the story with kind of your background in education entrepreneurship, because City Schoolhouse really evolved from years of your efforts to kind of recognize the needs in your community, especially among other families and homeschooling families in particular, and then create solutions. And I know you told me before we started the podcast that you were running a home-based preschool co-op back in Los Angeles before you moved back to Kentucky to be closer to family. And you launched this preschool program in 2013. You were a stay-at-home mom, interested in homeschooling, and saw that other families around you had a need and a desire to engage in some kind of cooperative preschool program. So tell us a little bit about your early endeavors with education entrepreneurship.
Very good. I'd love to. So it was really very accidental. I had twins right out the gate and then a little boy shortly thereafter. And so I had all these toddlers running around, and my temperament was not one to be like still at home, just snuggling up with my kids. I love them very much, but I was a better mom when I was busy and active with them. And so I started doing a lot of just intentional learning with them at home. And my friends would come over and they would say, "Oh, I love this. Can my kids," jokingly, they would say, "can my kids come to your preschool?" And I was like, I don't have a preschool. And so conversations continued and went on. And what I found was that even though first of all, Los Angeles is hard to exit, it's expensive, number one. So it's expensive to have your kids in high quality care. Two, it's hard to get around places. So you really need to be very neighborhood centric um, to make life manageable. And then thirdly, what I observed was that a lot of my friends, even though they were highly intelligent, highly educated, sophisticated women, had almost no exposure to child development. They didn't know how to implement, routines. They didn't know how to give boundaries. They didn't know how to expose their children to the richness of the world around them in a way that was accessible to them, to the children. And so what I did was I said, well, if you guys are really interested, I'd be willing to do this in a part-time capacity, but you guys have to like rotate in and be a volunteer. So it became a cooperative very quickly. And I just had like 5 kids to start, plus my 3. And then it kept growing. And I started organizing family field trips where we would go all over Los Angeles and surrounding areas to do all kinds of amazing learning things. The Hollywood Bowl, the Getty, LACMA. We take the train into the Science Center. We did all kinds of fun things, but I led basically as a tour guide with families. And it gave the families a lot of confidence to do these things with their children because I was kind of paving the way for them. And it was a great way to learn together. So that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, and you ended up leasing or renting space from a church and having this
Yeah.
kind of outside of your home as more of a homeschool preschool co-op. And
Yes.
you ended up with how many kids?
35 families. So,
Wow.
yeah, serving 35 families between like our field trips and our day-to-day practice. Our class size stayed about anywhere between 8 to 12. But again, it was very part-time. I had my own kiddos at the time, and then families would rotate in as my assistant teacher for the day. And yeah, but we did end up becoming insured and renting space, and it became a business. And once again,
Yeah.
like I said, really on accident, but it was a very cool experience. So
Yeah, and really your entry point into education entrepreneurship, and now, of course, what's become increasingly popular in terms of these innovative, decentralized education models, often sprouting from homeschool co-ops into microschools and learning pods. And you were very much at the forefront of that a decade ago. So you left LA to go return to Louisville, Kentucky to be closer to family.
right.
And tell us what happened next. You decided to continue your education entrepreneurship program there, serving disadvantaged youth in an after-school program. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
So when we moved back, I knew that I didn't have the preschool co-op happening anymore. And like I said, I'm the best mom that I can be when I'm active and engaged with my kids. And so I knew that we needed to do something as a family that would engage my intellectual and my desire to serve with them. And so when we moved back, I had some friends that already had an existing nonprofit, and really just plugged in with them and asked how I could serve. So started helping their organization with a younger after school program. They already offered a pretty robust after school program for school age kids, but they didn't have anything for younger children. And the neighborhood was such that, and still is, that a lot of the older siblings were responsible for younger siblings. And so the older siblings couldn't end up participate in the older program because they had their younger siblings kind of tagging along and they couldn't participate. So there was a need. And I said, well, I can come, I can bring my kids and we can have fun learning experiences. And so that's what we started doing. In the process, we did everything was learning, but it was still fun. It was a safe place where these children could come. They could experience new things. They could do art. They could be physical. They weren't stuck behind a screen. And, in the meantime, we ended up building relationships with the families that were coming too. And I kept hearing over and over the same message for these families who had 5 and 6-year-old student kids that were getting ready to go to school. And they didn't have access to good transportation. And so going to schools across town that were public, but maybe better, were not a good option for them because their child could be sick at school and then they don't have a way to pick them up. And the neighborhood public schools were failing and not doing well academically. And so they didn't want them there. And they didn't feel equipped to homeschool alone. Many of them, had lower education backgrounds. Some of them had other struggles that made it impossible, single moms, etc. And then they couldn't afford private school. And in Kentucky, there's no funding for private school choice. There's no school choice funding. And so you're on your own. So I said, well, I'm planning to homeschool my own children. And if you guys want to partner together, we can see how we can make this work. And that's how City Schoolhouse was born. We had 3 to 6-year-olds the first year, and we started in 2017 with 9 other students plus 5 of my own. And then by the following fall, we had over 40 students enrolled.
Amazing. So tell us about that first year. I have a lot of aspiring education entrepreneurs listen to this podcast. And, I'd love if you could take us back to what it was like in that first year, kind of going from this after school program to launching a microschool essentially for your local community. What was that process like for you?
Well, it was not by the book at all. Everything is, you learn as you go. As an entrepreneur, you don't know what you need to know until you need to know it. And so, very much self-taught. My husband is an
Mm.
attorney, so he did our nonprofit paperwork for us. Our heart was always to be able to provide accessible education, meaning accessible to families that had potentially different learners, accessible to people because it was close to home, and accessible because it was financially accessible. So we were really we knew that we needed our nonprofit status for sure,
Mm.
because we were going to have to take in donations to make this work. Frankly and candidly, I worked for free for many, many years, and I worked full time pretty much. to make this school run. I hired the very first year I had all volunteer employees, volunteers and myself. The second year that we started, I brought on one full-time teacher, trained paid teacher, and then I hired one of our moms part-time to help us with our food program. And then the following year, I hired another teacher. So every year we hired more people. Right now, I have a staff of 5 teachers and one after-school coach. So that's pretty cool, but I still have a huge volunteer base. As far as, the logistics of getting started, I would just say, just keep trudging forward. We have been flooded out of a building. We have only rented. We've never owned our own space. And so that has presented its own dynamics and challenges, obviously cost savings, but also some strain. When COVID happened, we had to move out of our location because the church in which we were renting did not want us to operate, and we needed to be completely autonomous to make our own decisions about learning in person or not. And so we had an unexpected move in in May of 2020. And so we had to move out of a place that we had just moved into. So there's been a lot of ups and downs, and many, many times I have said over the last 6 years, I think this is it. I don't think we can do it again. And then we just keep going. And I know that God has blessed our mission to serve people that need it. I know that 100% because there were many days where I said, okay, I think we have to close the doors. And then all of a sudden, a huge generous donation came through, or something happened almost miraculously to just lift our sails and take us to the next place. But it is amazing to do what we do every day. We have families who have special need learners that were on multi-year waiting lists that couldn't get into any other special learning school in Jefferson County, and we were able to accommodate them in our environment. We have families that we're keeping together from 1 year old all the way up to 16 years old. We have a family-centric environment. We're having parents come in and volunteer, witness their children learning, being a part of their learning. The kids are right now, they're at the Kentucky Center for the Arts, going to a formal theater play, best Christmas pageant ever. I'm sorry. The experiences that they're getting, they have been to farms this year. They've been to the Speed Art Museum. Like, they are getting a rich cultural and life opportunities that they probably would not be getting otherwise. So sorry if I digress, but just keep going. If you know you're supposed to be doing what you do, just keep going.
Yeah, that perseverance and determination is a common theme I hear from education entrepreneurs, and probably a common characteristic of entrepreneurs more generally. But just these ups and downs, like you mentioned, dealing with COVID, and then this past spring, having your building flood, all kinds of challenges that are unexpected, and yet you keep moving forward and to serve these children. So Christina, tell us a little bit more about the vision of City Schoolhouse. You're a faith-based program for primarily inner city youth and families in Louisville, Kentucky. Tell us about sort of your curriculum and pedagogy, the philosophy, what you're trying to create there. And you said it's pre-K to 12th grade, is it? Multi-age?
We will have 12th graders next year. We actually only our oldest students this year are juniors. So
great. Yeah. But it's that one room schoolhouse feel, right? That it's multi-age, like you said, siblings together in the same location, and keeping that real family focus. So tell us a little bit more about the vision and the structure.
So the vision is really to provide almost a private homeschooling environment where kids are learning absolutely what they need to learn, but then they're also in an environment that's warm and welcoming, where where they're learning how to cook, they're learning hospitality, they're learning how to garden, they're learning about project planning and management and budgeting. So I was going to homeschool my own children, and I realized, like, there's so much lost in a traditional learning environment where you can learn all of these academic things, but what are you missing? Right? What about the richness of life? What about when you want to go and be a mom, or, be a friend and make a meal for somebody and you don't know how because you never had those exposure, and the hours spent in school, where, the required learning can be so much smaller, uh, so much of a smaller portion of the day, so that the experiential learning can be so much greater. And what we found, and I knew from just doing this with my own children, is they love learning when they're engaged, right? So if they all of a sudden are cooking food from India, and they're learning about natural ingredients that go into the food, because we do have a sous chef program where our students actually go into the kitchen every day and cook the food that is served to our students every single day. They're learning about geography. They're learning about weather. They're learning about economics. Why does it cost so much to have this spice here, or have avocados in Kentucky versus California, or, all the things that come up. Then they also learn about serving. They learn about how to have manners. These are all very important skills in life. And so we make learning fun, and then they love to learn. We require a core skills, math, language. We have piano as part of our core skills. All of our school age students have individual piano lessons every week. They just finished their musical performance for the holiday last week, which was amazing. But they have to do those things. And then once they do those things, all of our afternoons are project based. So to give you an example, our upper school students, the first month of this year, they picked a project where they were going to pitch to me. They wanted to build a gaga ball pit. And so they, on our property. And so they had to research the building, research the supplies, research all the things that they needed to actually do it and construct it. And then they needed to send me the budget and allow me to approve it. And they had to do like a formal verbal pitch on this project too. And then once I gave them the okay, they went forward and did the project. So they constructed a gaga ball pit on our school property, and also learned important business skills like budgeting and, presenting proposals to people. So these are students who are 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. So pretty cool.
Amazing. So are all the students homeschooled technically? Do they attend full-time, part-time? How does that work?
So we have our provisional accreditation through ISACS, which is the Independent Schools Association of the Central States. We are a full-time school option. We do have an option for homeschoolers that want to come 2 days a week. So
Perfect.
we blend all the students together. So if they come 2 or 3 days a week as a homeschooler, they are declared as a homeschooler, but we have full-time students as well.
So, one question I get periodically from folks who might be unfamiliar with or skeptical toward these kind of non-traditional educational models is, well, how do you know it's successful? How do you know the children are learning? How do you measure success and measure outcomes? And I think it's really, important to kind of focus on this, because what you're saying is academics are a key part of it. And there's so much more that we're often not focused on in our traditional standardized education systems. So I'd love to hear your response to that. Sort of, how do you measure success and outcomes in terms of core academics? And then some of these other, more sort of holistic ways of measuring success and outcome.
So the academics are really easy. We don't love testing, but for our own credibility and assessment value, not on our students, but on ourselves, we did implement a nationally standardized test once a year. So I can tell you that my students learn incredibly faster than they would in the public schools. All of them come to me extremely academically neglected and behind on many fronts. And we see huge growth in rapid succession. We have had students jump 3 grade levels in math in a single year. We've seen reading scores shoot up. because all of a sudden they're paying attention. Like there is a culture of learning. They are not they're not part of a system anymore that forces things. We are encouraging learning. We love it. Everybody loves it. It's part of who and what we are. This is what we do all the time. We don't do this between the hours of 8:30 and 3:30. So the academics are easy to assess, and we are doing great. The other things are harder to assess just because the people are so different, right? But I can tell you this: I had a young man join us last spring, and late in this, he was a 5-year-old, and he joined us. He barely spoke. He was very smart, but barely spoke. He was very much a part of COVID, and he didn't have other siblings. And now he is like you know, um, a wild, what do we call them? Like a butterfly, a social butterfly. I mean, he's talking to
Mm.
everybody, he's playing with everybody. And so just his social skills alone in 1 year have made a huge leaps and bounds. We have kids who were in traditional learning settings that were told they were academically behind, or they were this, or they were that. And then they come to us, and we're able to nurture them as a person, find out how they excel. Maybe they're an auditory learner. Maybe they need to sit down and do more tactile exercises. Maybe they need to use their skill set in a different way than the teacher thought that they needed to. And so we meet those kids where they are, and then they blossom. So we have seen huge growth. I can't tell you how many parents have come up to me and said, I have my happy child back. Thank you so
Mm.
much. Or this has made literally, the difference of life in our home. They used to come home saying, I'm stupid. And now they come home saying, I'm special. I mean, these are the things that I'm hearing directly from parents. I'm not, and this is why we keep going.
Yeah.
This is why when the hurdles come, you say, this is the choice for them. They don't have another choice.
It's really one of the things I find most rewarding with my work, and being able to help amplify your voices as education entrepreneurs, and share the stories of your programs, because as diverse as these programs are, microschools, pods, learning collaboratives, low-cost private schools, the common feature is like joyful learning. It's kids are
Yes.
happy and they're flourishing and families are happy. And it's just so incredible to be able to share these stories, and also to be able to show what's possible in education. And you said earlier, obviously you're exceeding benchmarks that are associated with conventional public schools in your area. Your students are thriving both academically and socially and emotionally. Um, so what is the special sauce? I mean, is it really just that you have this culture of a love of learning and individualized education? Is that all it takes, do you think, to achieve this? And is that why it's not as possible, do you think, in conventional schools? Or I guess what is your sense of why this is so successful in your model?
I think it's successful because we understand and identify that the person matters. That's it. They
Hmm.
are uniquely created by God to be unique learners, to be unique givers, to be who they are. And you can't put 26, 27 kids all the same age in a classroom and expect them to be able to become creative and, unique and stand out. And I mean, one great thing about the way that we learn in our mixed age classes is that you could have a 6-year-old that's a great reader, but isn't good in math. And you
Hmm.
could have a 9-year-old that's not a good reader, but really good in math. And they both can be in the same place. And no one is stigmatized about who is smart and who is dumb, because everyone is different. Everyone's age is different. Everyone's contribution is different. We recognize that academics are not the only thing that we care about. We care about virtue. We care about you being kind to somebody else. We care about you being respectful of not only our space, but of other people. And I think when we bring it back to, we are teaching people, we are not a system, everything changes.
It seems so
Everything
simple,
changes.
right?
It is simple. It is simple. And that's the hardest part, is fighting the system, is fighting the ideas in the community of like, well, this is where I work, or this is where I go to school, or this is where I went to school, and
Mhm.
helping people understand that there's just so much richness in not being a part of the system and being a part of a community.
So one thing that you're doing, Christina, is offering programs, after school programs for public school students nearby,
Yep. Yep.
to give them a taste of this incredible learning environment that you've built. Tell us about that program and some of your other sort of out of school programs for students who are attending conventional schools, but can get a little bit of a glimpse of City Schoolhouse.
So that's what we want to do. We want to share the love of the learning that we have with others that may not be ready to embark fully on, um, I'm going to this unique independent school. So we, since our beginning, we actually have run year-round programming, and the reason is, if you're a single mom and you're working, you're still working when the public schools are out. So what do you do for childcare? Childcare is often unaffordable. It's not, and if you're being left with a sibling or a neighbor, it might not be safe. And so we wanted to provide a real need in the community, which was to provide year-round programming for people, because just because the school system is out doesn't mean everybody else is available. So we've done that since the beginning. We run 8 weeks of summer camp. So we take off Memorial Day week, and then after that, we run summer camp, all actually more than 8. We start in June and we go all the way through August, until the public schools go back, and then we still offer childcare for anybody that needs it in the blip. We have 2 winter camps coming up this week, or the next 2 weeks. We have 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday program for each day, with extended care for kids that have parents that work. These are also heavily subsidized need-based programs. We have 20 students that are coming to those programs, and only about 3 of them out of the 20 are paying full rate. So we're still serving people that have needs, not only because of care needs, but also financial needs. Then we do an annual business fair every year as part of the Acton Children's Business Fair program. This will be our 5th year in a row doing it. That's huge. We had over 60 kids from throughout the county come last year. We're hoping to grow it again this year. But anytime JCPS, which is the local public school system, is closed, we are open, and we are serving kids with STEM activities, physical activities. We bring in special teachers. We have, field trips and everything else. So. Oh,
It's
but
so
then
great.
specifically the after school care. So we're
Yeah.
strategic. We are literally right next door to a public school. And we have a partnership with them, because this year the local public school district decided to do a new busing program, which released some elementary students at 2:20 in the afternoon. You can imagine, if you work till 5, how that doesn't work for your schedule. So we knew that there was a need literally right next door to serve families. So we launched our aftercare program this past fall in August, and it's been going great. We have 20 students in the program, and as soon as we have more funding, we'll be able to open the doors for more kids. We send one of our staffers over to pick them up every day. They come to us in a warm, caring environment where they can get out of fluorescent lights, put down their backpacks, take a deep breather, have a snack, go outside for an hour. Imagine that. Run around and be a kid, and then come inside. We're offering an art program 1 day a week. We have reading tutors coming in 2 days a week. And then, or they can just play until their parents come to get them. So
I love it. I love it. And you have about 20 students in your
20
after,
in the program. Aftercare
what was
program
that?
has
20?
20.
20. And again, the majority attending on generous financial aid that
Right.
you're able to provide just through individual donations and fundraising efforts.
That's right.
Just amazing. So what is your vision for the future, Christina? Where do you see this going? I can sense that you want to serve so many more students, and if you had the funding, you would be able to do that. But where do you see City Schoolhouse going, say over the next 5 years?
Our plan right now, we are in the process of our self-study of our accreditation, and we also should be receiving our childcare licensing, which is a big funding help for our low-income families that receive that we serve for early childhood. So that is a big help in the very near future. We are hoping to open another location in Louisville in the next, probably not fall of 24, but fall of 25 for sure. One thing I like to clarify is that although we are accessible and we want to be accessible to families that can't afford us because there isn't other choice, we are not limited to families that can't afford us. We are a high caliber, elite, individualized learning plan and program for students. And there are a lot of families in much more affluent parts of town that are very interested in what we're doing and want to be a part. So we are not bound by only serving low income families. There's also a great need for the non-traditional learner to be able to come into a school environment that can really meet their needs and allow them to thrive. And so that's a whole other area of service. Right now, we welcome those students directly into our own classrooms, and we have accommodations for them. But there's a great need for that in our community. And so we look forward to being able to expand these programs in different parts of the city.
Yeah, and what about these more ancillary programs like the after school program and the summer camps and the Christmas camp coming up? Is that also something that you'd like to expand if possible?
Yeah, those are programs that are open year round. I mean, for anybody in the community. So
Mm,
those are not just for our city schoolhouse full-time students.
mm.
It is intended to be outreach and sharing a vision of love of learning with more people. So yes, definitely those programs um, will and need to expand.
It's just incredible because I think, some folks listening, and I know I feel this way too. I'm hearing you say that you run this, full-time, newly accredited or about to be accredited private school. And you run an after school program and you run summer camps and you run holiday camps. It's essentially multiple small businesses that you're running. Um, I guess I don't know how to phrase it, but is that something that you'd recommend for other education entrepreneurs to sort of say, well, I'm already doing this daytime program. I might as well offer an after school program and might as well do a summer camp program. I guess, how should prospective entrepreneurs think about expanding to these other community-based programs?
I mean, for us, we were always year round. So the plan was always to run this program year round from the beginning, because one thing that I am very clear about is we don't run on a school calendar.
Mm.
We have year long learning, because as you become an adult, if you want to thrive, you have to always be a learner. And so we don't want to box in learning. We don't want to box it into the school day. We don't want to box it into the classroom. We don't want to box it into a calendar. And so from the beginning, we've always had the vision and have served, maybe not as fully as we do now, but we always, even from the beginning, it had programs through the summer and programs on, we would do special programs through the winter breaks and things like that. It's hard to find, it's hard to have good staffing. It's hard to be a lot of places all at once. And so you definitely have to assess, what can you do realistically and do it well. And so we're at a place where we have been able to bring on enough staffing to really do these things and do them well. And so we've continued to expand.
It's just so exciting. And I think, when you said we don't go by a traditional school calendar, we think very differently about teaching and learning. It sounds more like your kind of homeschool foundation is informing that, right? That homeschoolers
Yes.
often don't tie learning to, 5 days a week, 10 months of the year, but very much a family-centered year-round experience. And of course, we see that coming through with City Schoolhouse. And I guess that gets me maybe to my last question, Christina, or one of my last questions here. which is, you started City Schoolhouse in 2017. There was momentum building for microschools. Obviously, homeschooling was growing and
Mhm.
diversifying. There were innovative models appearing. You mentioned the Acton Children's Business Fair, Acton Academy, that microschool network
Mhm.
started in 2009. So there were these seeds of education, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and you were very much a part of that. What is your reflection now, kind of post-COVID and the education disruption there and this increased popularity of these models? What do you think is driving that, and where do you see that going, and how does City Schoolhouse fit in?
I think it's great. I think anything to disrupt the existing learning system and make life more about the person and the family and the community is an improvement. And I would never want it to not exist. You asked what my vision was. One thing I failed to mention is I really want to empower moms and dads to be able to be a part of their children's lives in a much more hands-on way. And when your child is on a bus and then sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day and then on a bus home, when do you get to be with your children? You know, I want to be able to empower families to either take to be a part of our school or something like it, where they are in a full time environment where families are welcomed into the classroom and a part of the community, or where they are even willing to take the leap, which sometimes can be scary, but take the leap into homeschooling and have supportive, cooperatives like us. But I think anything to disrupt the existing system is the best thing that could happen to education. I think anything that brings the focus back on the family, the community, and the child instead of the system is always going to be best.
So great. So, Christina, if my listeners and viewers want to learn more about City Schoolhouse and connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
So we would love for you to connect with us. And if you're interested in doing something like this in your own community, I'm willing to talk to you. We're not limited by boundaries of Jefferson County and Louisville, Kentucky either. So give us a call or email. Our website is www.cityschoolhouse.org. We're also on Facebook. You can check us out there, different things that we do. If you want to support our teachers or our classrooms or our students, we would love for you to do that. You can do that on our website, cityschoolhouse.org. And feel free to reach out to me. I'm accessible. So,
Wonderful. Well, Merry Christmas to you, Christina, and
Merry
thank you
Christmas.
so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you for having me.